you fix a system that has consistently failed to protect people of color? Blacks are nearly 3 times more likely to be killed by police than whites, and yet blacks are more likely to be unarmed. And while some people want to fix police departments by moving to a community-led model, others believe police reform is still possible.
Police training alone does not work.
Lisa Calderon has served on the use of force committees of the Denver Sheriff's Department and Denver Police Department.
We really have to look at structural change through the courts and through the legislature.
She supports shifting some police funding into hiring more social workers and mental health professionals to respond to calls.
Officers being social workers, addictions professionals. We have a terrible homelessness crisis in this district, and police are called to respond to that. That's not their job.
I think we can put in new policy.
A lot has changed since Denver police trainer Tyrone Campbell was in the academy.
Now I'm in the fortunate position of saying this type of behavior isn't allowed on this department.
Laws requiring de-escalation and anti-bias training are relatively new. A 2017 law requires Colorado officers to complete 4 hours of holds and restraints training, 2 hours of de-escalation training, 4 hours of anti-bias training, and 2 hours of community policing. A total of 12 hours to learn how to deal with people having their worst day.
How you take somebody into your care, custody, or control. In other words, how you stop them, right? But then the other one is how you treat them once you actually have them under your care, custody, or control.
Campbell says the real work happens when officers complete a day of engagement at a place of their choice, like Children's Hospital or the rescue mission.
The easiest one is called contact theory, which is when have you ever spent time with somebody who's different than you, somebody who doesn't look like you, doesn't believe like you, doesn't think like you, different socioeconomic class.
But unlike other requirements for officers, like passing a psychological exam, a candidate isn't disqualified if they fail to recognize and deal with their own bias before hitting the streets.
And that's something that the administration can take into consideration. Not very receptive to somebody who's not going to reflect the city well.
And all this could have been easily avoided if police could, or the system really, could hold their own accountable.
Matthew Horace is a 28-year police veteran who has written about injustices in law enforcement. He says laws need to change to create national standards that are upheld by all police agencies across the country.
It boils down to 4 simple things: recruitment, hiring, training, and accountability.
99% of all officers involved in police killings are never charged, and laws prevent them from being held individually liable. Meanwhile, millions in tax dollars are spent by police departments in lawsuits and settlements each year.
In many cases, the officers still work for the department. So there's no disincentive not to behave badly if you know, number one, you're not going to be impacted by the financial consequences.
We need police reform that our leaders should lead now.
Right now, activists are calling on Congress to pass federal legislation creating a police misconduct registry, ban chokeholds, and stricter use of force policies. All policies adopted in Colorado's Police Accountability Bill. Attorney General Phil Weiser says there needs to be a fundamental shift in how we view justice.
Instead, how about we look for diversionary programs, restorative justice, drug treatment, so that we're helping community members live productive lives without thinking that everything requires incarceration.
African Americans aren't the only ones with a hard time trusting law enforcement. Tonight, Ivan Rodriguez explores the relationship between Denver police and the Latino community.
6 years ago, April Sanchez saw on the news that there had been an officer-involved shooting. After receiving calls from family, she worried for her son, Ryan Ronquillo.
And I just collapsed and tried calling my son's phone, and he wasn't answering.
Ryan was driving in a stolen car and was on his way to a funeral. Police had a warrant for his arrest.
They followed him around all day, and there was many a times they could have arrested him peacefully. They saw him pulled over on the side of the road. They saw him going to 7-Eleven, come back out with a pop.
Denver police decided to close in on Ryan while he was in a parking lot. His mother says he was beaten by officers before being able to surrender. When Ryan tried to flee, officers say they could have been hit and made the decision to fire into the car. The shooting was later deemed justified.
His family was left to bury him, and we'll never forget what they did.
The death of her son at the hands of those sworn to protect only increased her distrust in law enforcement and their relationship with the Latino community.
They go around and stop young kids, and they they just harass them. Kills me every day.
For the Colorado Latino Leadership Advocacy and Research Organization, or CLARO, it's distrust that leads many Latinos to avoid the numbers 911.
It's risky if you're not sure what they're going to do when they get there. It's risky if you're not sure whether they're going to cooperate with ICE.
Cortez suggests police take a different approach and customize their enforcement based on the specific services neighborhoods need.
Trust has to be earned, and that's earned on a case-by-case basis in the neighborhoods where Latinos live.
Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin knows there's a lot of work to do.
We need to redouble our efforts, not only with the Latino community, but with all of our community.
One of the ways is by increasing the diversity within the police department itself. The most recent graduating class of officers was 36% Latino.
We must have a police department that represents the community that we serve. And myself, as a Latino that grew up in North Denver to a single parent and graduated from North High School, I still use that as my lens, as my perspective on how we can help people of color and ensure that we have a diverse representation within the police department.
On the shooting of Ryan Ronquillo, Chief Pazin says his death did result in policy changes.
Since then, we have enacted a very strong and progressive use of force policy, including prohibiting shooting at moving vehicles.
Also making it clear that DPD does not cooperate with ICE, and police should not be asking questions about citizenship.
We have done a lot of work, and we need to do more work.
Officer Raul Silvas is on the front lines of that work and engagement in many lower-income neighborhoods.
With everything that's been happening lately in across the country, you know, I think it's needed that they can depend on us and you know, have that relationship.
Silvas was born and raised in the same neighborhoods where he's now giving back.
Being Latino and helping them out, I think there's a connection. And one of the things is, I grew up in Southwest. I grew up here, and being able to relate and have the same commonalities growing up, I think that helps.
With me?
Coming up, a conversation on race with the former chief of Aurora Police.